Those that us hang around the town and let what others say come true. We're just good for nothing. They only get a voice rolled up shit. Now we can hardly
Oh, oops, sorry about that. I think I've got the audio now. Yes, it is it is a crazy period of time. It's a little bit nuts now. If you all are feeling a little bit off kilter, I certainly understand, but you know why I'm here. I'm here to ground us in reality. I hope that's what you get from what I do. So let's get started on this, y'all. I want to start off today's show talking about what is happening um, in Syria for just a few minutes, because what's happening there as a result of the Biden Harris administration financing and arming extremists to overthrow the democratically elected president Bashir al Assad last year has resulted in absolute horror for the Syrian people. And this is part of a statement that was released by the Black Alliance for Peace. Full disclosure, Black Alliance for Peace is the organization I belong to. I am the chairperson of the coordinating committee for the Black Alliance for Peace. This is a statement we just released about this issue. And it says HTS offensive in Syria, a proxy for imperialist domination. The Black Alliance for Peace unequivocally condemns the recent announcement by Colonel Hassan Abdul Ghani, spokesman for the HTS-led Syrian Ministry of Defense, regarding the second phase of military operations against so-called remnants of the former Assad government. This escalation of violence is not merely a local or regional conflict, but it's a direct manifestation of US-led imperialist intervention in Syria. HTS, which is the acronym for Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, far from being an independent actor, functions as a proxy force, advancing the geopolitical interests of the United States, Israel, and their allies, whose primary goal is to destabilize the region and maintain control over its resources. The primary contradiction in Syria is not between competing local factions, but between the Syrian people and the imperialist forces that have systematically exploited and devastated their nation. The US, alongside its NATO allies and regional partners, have fueled this crisis by arming, funding, and legitimizing extremist groups like HTS to serve as instruments of the imperialist agenda. These groups, under the guise of opposition to the former Assad government, have perpetuated violence, sectarianism, and chaos, all while advancing the interests of their imperialist backers. As the conflict in Syria continues to unfold, it is increasingly evident that large sectors of the US left have failed to ground their analysis in objective materialist principles, instead resorting to subjective moral posturing. This failure is not new. It echoes the left's misguided alignment with the US-led imperialism in Libya, Iraq, Nicaragua, Tigray, Ethiopia, Ukraine, and beyond. Their relative silence in the face of the recent atrocities, massacres, folks, literal massacres, underscores a betrayal of the anti-imperialist principles they claim to uphold, actively manufacturing consent for these murders in real time. The entirety of this statement and more can be found at blackallianceforpeace.com in the latest analysis section of the home page. So thank you very much for indulging me a little time to read our statement about a topic that not a lot of people on the left are talking about because they're confused. Because the left is fractured and a mess in the United States. And one day we're going to get into that, but not this day, because we have to talk about these rulings against the Trump administration executive orders that are coming back now from judges, temporarily halting these orders or telling the Trump administration to turn their stuff around, to undo what they have done. Case in point, just yesterday, the Trump administration was ordered by a judge to bring back thousands of federal workers fired by Elon Musk's Doge. A federal judge just yesterday ordered Donald Trump and his administration to reinstate thousands, if not tens of thousands, of probationary workers let go in mass firings across multiple agencies last month, saying that the terminations were directed by a personnel office that had no authority to do so. U.S. District Judge William Alsup in San Francisco ordered the Department of Veterans Affairs, the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Defense, the Department of Energy, the Department of the Interior, and the Department of the Treasury to immediately offer reinstatement to employees terminated on or about February 13 and 14, using guidance from the Office of Personnel Management and its acting director, Charles Ezell, appointed by Trump. Okay, so Alsup directed the agencies to report back within 7 days with a list of probationary employees and an explanation of how the departments complied with his order as to each person. We're going to talk about the term probationary employees in a minute, because it's wild, the argument that the Trump administration lawyers are making about these firings. The temporary restraining order came in a lawsuit filed by a coalition of labor unions and organizations as the Republican administration moves to dramatically downsize the federal workforce. And I'm reading this from an article in Reuters, by the way. The White House and the Department of Justice did not immediately respond to messages seeking comment. Of course, they're not going to, probably. Alsup expressed frustration with what he called the government's attempt to sidestep laws and regulations governing a reduction in its workforce, which it is allowed to do by firing probationary workers who lack protections. He was appalled, the judge was, that employees were fired for poor performance despite receiving glowing evaluations just months earlier. The judge said, quote, "It is sad. It is a sad, sad day when our government would fire some good employee and say it was based on performance when they know good and well that's a lie." End quote. He said it. I didn't, but I'm gonna repeat it later. That should not have been done in our country, Judge Alsup said. Lawyers for the government maintain that mass firings were lawful because individual agencies reviewed and determined whether employees on probation were fit for continued employment. All right, here is where I'm going to insert my commentary, because we know this is not true. These people did not believe, they didn't ask for anybody to review those employees that were on the probationary employee list. They didn't look at anybody's performance reviews. The judge did. The judge's staff looked at people's performance reviews. But the Ezell, Trump's appointment, you know that man did not look at any performance reviews, and the people he ordered to do this, they did not look at anything. They didn't. We know this is not true. The sitting agency heads that were replaced by Trump and the people who then issued the orders to fire employees at that agency en masse via email, you know doggone well, dear listeners, there was no review of those employees and their performance records done by anybody. And we all know this to be true. But this does beg the question for me, which is why I'm going to ask it, because I bet you're thinking it too. Did Trump's cavalcade of clowns not realize that probationary employees are not on probation because of job performance issues? Like, follow me here. Do you think they thought that probationary in this context doesn't mean that they did something wrong and that's why they're on probation, right? I cannot be the only one kind of thinking they can't be thinking this, because none of this makes sense, right? No, they're not probationary because they did anything wrong. They're probationary because they're newly hired and in the probationary or in the wait and see if they're still a good fit, period, for the job. It's that first 60 to 90 days. Some employers have a 6-month probationary period for new employees. Some have a year. I mean, I don't, and I keep saying it, I don't want to dismiss these people as being stupid. You know, the Trump's cavalcade of clowns. That's their new name. He doesn't have a staff. He doesn't have a cabinet. It's a cavalcade of clowns. That's what it is. So I don't want to dismiss these people that I call that of just being stupid, because it's easy to just, wave that off as, oh, well, they don't know. And maybe we can reason with them if we just tell them the truth. If we don't understand that we cannot reason with these people, the truth does not matter to them. They actively hate the truth. I don't know what to tell you, but I don't want to just dismiss these folks as just being stupid. I don't think that that's the case. I did question, like, are they so blinded by their narrow-minded hatred that they've forgotten what the word probationary means in an employment context? I just, because the alternative is they're just evil. They're just evil, and they know what they're doing, and they just don't care. And that's, I think that's it. That they are just doing, like I said last week, they're throwing everything against the wall to try to expand the powers of the presidency as much as they can, as fast as they can, so that when these judges rule against these executive orders that are kind of designed to push the envelope of presidential power, you see, even when the judges rule against these executive orders, they don't care, because they understand that they are in a position to force the government to respond. And look at the other side of the so-called government in this country. Look at their response right now. Look at what the so-called opposition party is doing in opposition to everything that these people are doing. They're not doing much, if anything. I mean, as a matter of fact, yesterday, I think I read something that said that Richie Torres and a Republican lawmaker are starting a cryptocurrency caucus together. Yes, because I told you they're friends. All of them, they work with each other, and they're happy to work with each other. They're all paid by the same lobbyists. They're all paid by AIPAC. All of them get money from AIPAC, would save for maybe 10. There are hundreds of lawmakers in Congress, and most of them are on AIPAC's payroll. This is why people are being repressed for protesting genocide in Gaza. So these things are all connected. Look at what the Democrats are actually doing to oppose anything that is going on here. No, there's not enough resistance for the Republicans to even be nervous about what the response, the official government response will be to what they're doing. I mean, because look at what Democrats did last time during the last Trump administration with the insurrection. And those people should have been charged under the Insurrection Act, because there is a law that makes insurrection illegal. And the Insurrection Act literally says the president has the right and the power to call out the military to put down an insurrection. And yeah, we see what the Democrats' response to the first Trump administration was. They tried to impeach him. They did not really pay any attention to the actual things that they could have absolutely nailed him on, like the Insurrection Act, or like the emoluments clause. Yeah, that didn't come up. Remember those live streamed hearings on the January 6th? And remember those? Did you remember hearing any of the Democratic lawmakers bring either of those two pieces of legislation up? No, you didn't, because they weren't serious about actually impeaching that man and getting him charged with crimes so they could remove him. No, they weren't. They were, because if they had, they would have focused on at least those two pieces of legislation, but they didn't go anywhere near it. And these people are supposed to be smarter than me. Y'all, we're according to many people in the past few years, we radical Black, African, Pan-African, socialist, anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, anti-Zionist leftists, we don't know what we are talking about. We are agents of Putin. We are agents of China. We are Assadists. We have been called tankies, Marxists. You know, I can't even say some of the things that we've been called, because, you know, cuss words. But according to the response we get when we have told people this information, that the Democrats have not ever really challenged Trump on anything he's done over both of these administrations of his so far, we get told we don't know what we're talking about. And then in the very next breath, people say, well, the Democrats can only do so much. How is it that when the Republicans have power and all they need is one vote over the margin, and they out the gate wrecking shop, all they need to know is they have the tie-breaking vote, and they just run rampage. They just rampage. Democrats have a congressional majority for 2 years in the Obama administration and do nothing of substance for the people. So, other than these employees being designated as probationary employees, there was no justification for firing these people. And the fact that the former head of OPM knew very well that he had no authority to fire federal employees. Well, of course he had to be replaced, because that is why Trump did what he did. He replaced all of the agency heads first. Remember the first week, and the plane crash happens at DCA, and people are blaming Trump for firing FAA employees, and that caused the plane crash. And I am trying to explain to people that no, the air traffic problem at DCA has been a problem for decades. And as a matter of fact, the Biden administration voted to increase the flights out of DCA last year over the objections of the DC Airport Authority, and over the objection of some Democrat lawmakers like Tim Kaine. I mean, I got to give them credit when it's due, when they actually earn it, which is not often. I tried to tell people that, and people told me I didn't know what I was talking about. I'm just trying to give Trump a break. I'm really a closet Trump supporter and all of this kind of stuff. And then the article comes out in US News and World Report confirming everything I said. Okay. So yeah, I listened to this um or read the excuse that this article is saying Trump's lawyers gave, or the head of the interim head of OPM gave. And see, Trump had to fire those agency heads because they weren't going to do what he said. Also, dear listeners, remember when I was saying over and over again, why are people just following this man's orders? Why are people not sitting at their desk reading that email going, you gonna have to drag me out of here because you do not have the authority. You ain't my boss. You don't have the authority to fire me. This is not how it goes. This is not how you do a federal RIF. But no, there were very few people who did that. Trump had to get rid of the heads of the agencies first because the existing agency heads were not going to abide by those executive orders because they all knew they did not have the authority to fire people the way Trump was trying to do it. That's why he had to get rid of all those people and replace those agency heads with his people who know nothing about the law, know nothing about federal employment law. So, of course, Trump's appointment to OPM, Office of Personnel Management, OPM manages the personnel of them. They don't hire them. They can't fire them. But Isel doesn't know that. The former head of OPM did, but Trump's appointee doesn't. Okay, but this gets worse. This actually gets worse. So after I stopped twisting myself in knots, wondering whether these folks are just, brain dead, I realized no, maybe they're really sticking to that adage, last hired, first fired, right? I actually don't even want to choose, I think, between two things that might be true to some degree at once. And look, I'm not the only one questioning the logic of this claim made by Trump's appointee Ezel as the acting director of the Office of Personnel Management. Because let me stop before I get carried away because it's coming up on 30 minutes past the hour, and I don't want to miss the mark again. So here on Darker Than Blue, that means it's time for our engineer extraordinaire, Kalia, to play our station announcement. So let's go ahead and get that done right now. Oh, I am not hearing anything, so I'm not sure if our engineer is ready.
Give me a minute. Something's wrong.
Okay, all right. We're having technical difficulties. Hey, look, this is what happens sometimes with community community supported radio. We don't get the big bucks from the corporate sponsors. We don't get money from Target and Walmart and them for their commercials, for their overpriced stuff. We don't get money from BlackRock. We don't have big investment portfolios, and all of us here who are hosts of these shows, we don't get paid. We do this because we think what we have to share with you is important enough for us to do it for free. So we're not flush with cash here. We also just made a pretty significant physical move to another studio. So and my dog Kimathi is very upset about that still. Just the back and forth of it. So sometimes things don't run as smoothly as they would run on, say, a clear channel. But wouldn't you rather have a few little weird technical glitches every once in a while than a bunch of right-wing lies, or a bunch of, liberal lies from big old corporate owned radio stations with 15 ads in between some commentary or some music every hour? Do you want that, or y'all keep showing up to this show on Friday night? So that makes me think you kind of like what we got going on over here, and I really appreciate that. So until Kalia is ready, let's go on. Oh, and see, now he's ready. Let's go.
Hello, I'm Dave Zirin, host of WPFW's The Collision, with an editorial. Mahmoud Khalil, a student at Columbia University and a U.S. permanent resident, has been illegally detained by ICE for organizing against the U.S.-supported genocide in Palestine. In detaining Khalil, the Trump administration, the State Department, and the Department of Homeland Security have made clear that they are more than willing to violate constitutionally protected rights to punish those who speak out against them and Israel's war on the people of Gaza. This is a deeply alarming development. It is a march towards authoritarianism. It is a blatant encroachment on our democracy, and it places all of us in peril, especially members of the most vulnerable and marginalized communities in our country. In the words of Angela Davis, if they come for me in the morning, they will come for you at night. Standing together as people of conscience and demanding Mahmoud Khalil's freedom is a stand against fascism, and it is a stand for our collective right to free speech and protest. I'm Dave Zirin. This has been a WPFW editorial.
Thank you so much, Khalil, and thank you, Dave. Yeah, that is an incredible. Well, I actually don't think it's incredible. I think it is. We saw this coming. How did we see this coming? Why did we see this coming? Because what were we doing last year? What were we doing for 15 months last year? Well, if you don't know, we were out in the streets. We were out in the streets with these students at these encampments protesting this genocide that was facilitated by the Biden-Harris administration. And in that time, we advocated for a young student from Cornell, a young man named Mamadou Tall, who was also threatened with deportation under the Biden-Harris administration now for doing the same thing, for engaging in protests against the genocide of Palestinians in Gaza. Now, Mamadou was not kidnapped. He was not detained and held so that he couldn't talk to his lawyer or his family, but he was threatened with deportation. So in saying this, what I am conveying is that what Trump is doing, I would argue, it is an additional step toward authoritarianism, because there were previous steps toward authoritarianism carried out under the Biden-Harris administration. So this is the conversation that we're having around this situation with this young man, because this issue is not about him. This issue is about the power that ICE has, the power that the U.S. government has to do this. And how would an agency that is supposed to be constrained by alleged laws, how do they violate the very laws that they are supposed to be constrained by, that are allegedly enshrined in the Constitution? That's the primary contradiction. Not this particular person, but the context in which this person is being repressed, where it started, how it's facilitated, and who's responded to it and what their response has been. I mean, who has responded to it in regard to the administration and the politicians? Because something that has happened, and then we're gonna move on with this story about the judges' decisions on these EOs, because something happened with the detainment, the kidnapping and detainment of Khalil that didn't happen among the congressional Democrats in regard to Mamadou Tal. Or anybody else who was arrested and brutalized by police in the last 15 months during those student encampments. What some congressional Democrats have done, and I actually think it was Representative Rashida Tlaib who distributed a letter to the other Democratic congressmen to sign on a letter to support the immediate release of Khalil. And only 10 other Democrats signed it. There's actually a video going around TikTok, I think right now, of some young pro-Palestine protesters approaching Bernie Sanders as he's walking on the National Mall from one place to another, because he does that. I've seen him out here in these streets near the Capitol. He's just out there like that sometimes. So they don't even get in his way. They're walking along. He's nice to them at first. They say, "Hi, Bernie." He says hi back. They ask him, "Hey, can I ask you this? Will you make a statement about this situation with this man, Khalil, who has been kidnapped by ICE?" The way that man turned on that cranky old man, his real self, on these students they were just asking him to say something about this man who is a legal resident in this country, whatever that means. I'm not even touting these laws and the legality stuff, but he's got his papers that allegedly give him the right to be here, right? That's what the papers are supposed to signify. But now the government agencies are saying, the representatives of the government agencies are saying, no, those papers don't mean anything. What does that mean? This isn't about him anymore. This is about this government. This is about how they are able to do this. And Bernie Sanders wouldn't even say anything about it. Not only would he not say anything about it, he was nasty to those two students. So we knew this was coming because it was happening under Biden-Harris. Trump just took it a step farther than what they were doing. And I've been saying that. I know we in the Black Alliance for Peace have been saying that, and other anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist organizations have been. The Palestinian students have certainly been saying that. Like, all of this has been happening under Biden-Harris. And y'all told us to shut up, go home, sit down. We're anti-Semites. That's what you told those students whose people, whose families were being slaughtered. At the same moment, these students were out there on college campuses where they thought they had constitutional rights to raise their voices against injustice that they personally are impacted by. And they were not only told by this country's government to shut up, go sit down somewhere, and stop being mean to Jewish students, which they were not doing, by the way. Biden and Harris absolutely lied on those students and sounded just like Trump when Trump claimed that in the 2020 uprisings, oh, they're burning all the cities to the ground. All them cities are still up there. They're still up there. Yep, those cities still exist. Nothing was burned to the ground. All those cities still there. And in lying about these students and their conduct and behavior and actions during these encampments, Biden sounded just as nasty and hateful and stereotyping and bigoted as Donald Trump. I said what I said. So we saw this coming. We told you that you needed to be organized under Biden-Harris because it was repression then. It was fascism then. It's the same now, only it's been taken farther. It's escalated, but escalated from what? It didn't escalate from nothing. It escalated from a level of acceptable liberal authoritarianism that most people in this country have no problem with, as long as the people who are repressing the folks who are challenging this system have a D beside their name. Most people don't care what they do to us. But as soon as Republicans do the same thing, or worse, and it's usually worse, but as soon as Republicans take that action and take it a step further, then everybody gets outraged. Meanwhile, we're still either trying to bail our people out from being repressed under Biden and Harris, or we're trying to keep our people out of jail, waiting for trial dates on federal RICO charges, or we're trying to recover from being imprisoned or having to go to court or being expelled from school or being denied our diplomas from graduating or being blackballed to kept from getting jobs after graduating, which remember colleges said they would do. They would not give recommendations for students who participated in these encampments. In the Black Alliance for Peace and in several other organizations, we have had to advocate for our own members who were caught up in that campus repression. Students denied their diplomas, literally being denied graduation. And we had to step in and protect our people. So, yes, we recognize that this situation with Khalil, it is not unique, but this situation with him is also not focused on him. Our resistance to this action is the resistance to the system in which this action occurs and can be escalated in the first place. So, thanks, Dave Zirin, for that. That's a really, really great commentary. And I just want to add quickly that tomorrow at Payne Memorial AME Church at 1714 Madison Avenue in Baltimore, Maryland, the Black Alliance for Peace, my homies, the Baltimore Citywide Alliance, my loves, is holding its first town hall of the year. They'll be talking about African mothers on the front lines for Women's Month, building community control. From 1 to 3 p.m., doors open at 12:30. Food, childcare, and masks are provided. You can see more content from me also on patreon.com/LukeMonNation, LuqMannation, where you will find weekly shows about history, gardening videos, dog videos, of course, Darker Than Blue, and a whole lot more. All right, now, back to this conundrum we've got with these EOs and these rulings. Now, I'm not the only one who is giving that excuse the Trump admin appointee gave the side eye. Judge Alsup himself has also found that foolishness about all those people being fired due to performance issues that they allegedly investigated. He's also finding that difficult to believe, because he planned to hold an evidentiary hearing yesterday. But Ezell, the OPM acting director, the guy that Trump appointed to do his bidding, why did he not show up to testify in court, y'all? Or he didn't even show up for a deposition. Do you know what happens to you and me? If we do that, you know what happens to you and me. You are getting a call from me from DC Central Jail, DC Central Holding. Hey, can you please call around because I need some bail? That's what happens to us. We get subpoenaed. We get locked up if we're supposed to come to court and we don't. We get bench warrants issued for us. I wonder if there's a bench warrant out for Ezell. That would be interesting if there is. So the judge encouraged the government to appeal. I guess he was just dotting his I's and crossing his T's. But honestly, man, how does the head of the agency that did the firings not show up to defend his own actions? Is this normal? Of course it's not normal, y'all. But we have to understand that these people that we're talking about, they're not normal. Either this Ezell person is your typical MAGA appointee who feels entitled to do whatever his liege tells him to, regardless of the legality of it, and doesn't feel he has to answer to anyone who questions that. So no, he's not going to show up in court to answer to some judge who disagrees with his Führer? Come on now. But then again, maybe Ezell is kind of terrified, because maybe he didn't sign up to be sued in the first few weeks of assuming the position. Maybe he didn't agree to fall on his sword or to lie under oath for Trump, which, showing up in court and trying to justify those firings in an evidentiary hearing or in a deposition, well, that would have shown that they didn't investigate anything. That would have been lying. He would have had to lie. Maybe he didn't sign up for that. I mean, yeah, this is definitely not normal, but we need to understand that these folks are not normal. They're unconcerned with decorum and decency and politeness. They have the government's purse strings. That is all they care about. And they only care about that not to make as much money as they possibly can, or not just to make as much money as they possibly can, I should say. But money by itself, that's not really the goal. The real goal is to solidify and consolidate and expand power among the capitalist dictatorship class, who, as I hope you see, are fascists. And this is why we call them capitalist dictatorships, because anything we do in this society that is controlled by them, that they oppose, that they see as a threat to their ability to make profit, they will crush it. And every politician on Capitol Hill will do their bidding, Republican and Democrat. Have we not seen this? This is exactly what we've been talking about. The Democrat repression and the Republican repression. They're doing this. Now, the capitalists are not putting ideas in their heads. It's not like they're doing these things under duress. No, please, get that out of your head. Democrats are not like, no, I don't want to call the police on the protesters. Yes, they do. I live in DC with a Black Democrat mayor. She did not have a problem calling not just MPD, but the FBI police, the National Guard, the Secret Service police. Yeah, she had no problem. And folks in Atlanta experienced the same. They had no problem charging those protesters with 60 federal RICO charges for protesting down in Atlanta under a Black Democrat mayor. So please, let's not think that the capitalist dictatorship class is threatening the Democrats. You either pass this repressive legislation, giving the police more power to violate people's rights, or else I'm going to off your dog. No, come on now. No, it's a check. It is a check that they wave in these. You want this money? You want to keep getting this money? Then you better not question what I tell you to do. When I say jump, you better ask how and where. And they do. And they keep doing it. And I hope you have seen this over the past year with the Gaza situation alone, if you didn't pay any attention to anything else. But there was so much else, y'all, that we talked about. Right? So these folks are not only trying to amass money, as much money as they can. Really, what they want is to expand their power. Because, see, these people are fascists. They all are. They all love themselves some elements of fascism, who have been quick to violate our rights for the benefit of their profits. They've been doing that in increments for a while now, especially the tech giants, telling us about their fantastic privacy policies, but then selling our data out the back door, having contracts for surveillance and digital tracking with the CIA and the Department of Defense, giving the FBI and local law enforcement access to our social media accounts of people that the FBI and law enforcement are targeting. Everybody has quietly, well, not everybody, way too many people in this country have quietly accepted these small, seemingly small violations of our privacy rights and our human rights and our alleged civil rights. And the capitalists noted how obsessed we were with celebrity on those socials, to the point that we clearly did not care what they were doing with our data. So when they watched with interest the way we responded or didn't respond to horrible policies from the previous administration, they knew when this administration came in, they weren't going to have to do much of anything. They could do whatever they wanted, and we weren't going to do much. There are a few of those troublesome, quarrelsome kids and a few of those crazy old Black radicals out there. We can take care of them in a couple of years, because the rest of the people in this country are not going to stop us. We've seen that they're not. So there are an estimated 200,000 probationary workers, new employees across federal agencies. They include entry-level employees, but also workers who recently received a promotion. Yes, because sometimes in some agencies, when you receive a promotion, they put you in a probationary period for the promotion. About 15,000 are employed in California, providing services ranging from fire prevention to veterans care, according to the lawsuit filed by the Coalition of Labor Unions and Nonprofit Organizations. The plaintiffs said in their complaint that numerous agencies informed workers that ordered the terminations with an order to use a template email informing workers their firing was for performance reasons. That complete lie. An actual federal employee who is the head of the agency, who knows the law and the rules, they would have known that. Fired federal employees are receiving not just confirmation from judges in a lot of different cases that they were wrongfully fired. Their terminations were against the rules of the government, of OPM. Yes, the terminations, the firings carried out by the acting interim director of OPM, the Trump appointee, violated OPM's rules. So you see why the current OPM chief had to be gotten rid of, and this guy had to be placed in. So what do I think is going to happen next? I don't pretend to have a crystal ball, but I think even the judge, even though the judge has ordered that those employees in all of these agencies be reinstated, if that's done, it's going to be done so many months from now that so many people are going to be very deeply economically impacted. I think we're going to see stories about former federal employees who are nearing destitution because they were fired and they are not able to get their jobs back in a timely enough manner. I don't believe that people are going to get that buyout money. I don't know why anybody is believing that the man who bankrupted Atlantic City casinos, the man who reneged on his contracts to revitalize several casinos in Atlantic City, New Jersey, straight up lied, said that he would pay people for work and did not pay them after they did the work, got sued by lots of people. I think to this day, there are contractors in Atlantic City who have not been paid by Donald Trump. I do not know how anybody believes that this man keeps his word about anything. But again, people's self-interest in this country, I am learning, I think we are all kind of learning that the old Jim Crow, antebellum South, slave society attitude toward others is still very prevalent in this country among a lot of people. Because let's face it, y'all, the only reason most people do not care what was done to all of these federal employees who were fired in violation of OPM rules. They were fired in violation of the rules of each and every agency those people were fired from, and they were fired in violation of federal employment laws. The only reason people don't care about what these folks are doing to workers is because they were really hoping that most of those people would be Black. That's what they had in their minds. They had in that. So, and I think I've said this before, but I think you have finally figured it out for yourselves if you have not already come to that conclusion. Whenever these people say DEI or woke, just like when they used to say politically correct and welfare queen, just like when they talk about law and order, tough on crime. You know that those are buzzwords for what we want to control Black people over. When they use these words, they mean that Black people are causing us problems and we need to deal with them. So they can't say the N-word. And Lee Atwater, actually, I'm not making this up. Lee Atwater actually said this before I did, before any of us did. And you're just going to have to look up Lee Atwater. Lee, first name, last name, Atwater. Please Google Lee Atwater and his famous quote about Black people. Yep. Go ahead, Google, DuckDuckGo, whatever search engine, read DeepSeek. I love DeepSeek, by the way. I am not sold on American AI, but DeepSeek is kind of impressive, to tell you the truth. And it allegedly uses a fraction of the energy and resources than American developed AI. That's amazing to me. So yeah, DeepSeek has been, I feel smarter because of Deep. But yeah, look up Lee Atwater and his infamous quote about voting in Black people. And you'll understand what I mean when I'm talking about the attitude that still exists among a lot of not just white people in this country either, because you know those class trader Black folks, those Black folks who think they're middle class until they lose their job and they realize they're not, because they realize they really are 1 to 2 paychecks away from missing that mortgage payment, missing that rent payment, and being homeless. And if you're just a paycheck or two away from missing a payment that keeps you housed, if you're 1 or 2 paychecks away from not being able to afford food because you've paid all of your other bills, you've kept the lights on, you've kept the mortgage paid for another month, you kept the rent paid for another month, you paid the cell phone bill because you need the cell phone, paid that for the internet, paid the water, paid the power, so the lights are on, the water's still running, probably got a car, you got to pay the car insurance. So once you paid all the bills, then you don't have any money left for food. If you've been laid off, yeah, that's when you realize there's no such thing as the middle class in this country anymore, and you're not middle class. That sure was my realization. I had my little stuff. Well, I always knew I wasn't actually middle class, but for a minute there, for a few years when I was with Sputnik, it was like, hey, I'm getting paid pretty good, and they did pay pretty good. And this is another thing that I have a problem with in this country. That people don't pay workers what we're worth here. And in other countries, they seem not to have a problem paying Black folks a pretty good amount of money to speak our truth. Anyway, that's another conversation. And we're coming up on time here, but there's no middle class in this country. There's rich people and everybody else. Because everybody else is struggling to stay afloat, struggling to keep that head above. You know how that song goes in our favorite show, The Jeffersons. keeping your head above water, making a way when you can. Temporary layoff. Not good times for these folks. Because a lot of people are going to realize how close they still are to poverty, even with a good job. Because when you take that good job away, and that means you will end up on the street, you realize exactly where your position is in this society. You are closer to the bottom than you think, and you always have been. So it's not just the white MAGA supporters who are celebrating these people being fired. Even some of their own family members, folks, have no compassion. Who was it? It was some a white Christian nationalist pastor. A video is going around, or he's a Christian, calls himself a Christian. This man is sitting there saying the word compassion should be eradicated. Compassion, the word shouldn't exist in the Bible. Really? Because Jesus was compassion personified. That was the whole point. There's a lot of weird stuff going on, but it's only weird if you haven't been paying attention to the history, and if you haven't been watching the way these people have been moving and how we have kept telling you they've been organizing for this moment. They had no idea when this moment would come. They had no idea if they were going to be in a position to win this last election. Just so happens the Democrats are really that horrible that they would facilitate a genocide and sabotage their own party by mass murdering people. I just, shooting themselves in the foot is an understatement. So we have a problem in this country of people, quite honestly, not caring about people who they have made up their minds are not like them. And when they make up their mind that somebody is not like them and they've decided those people are their problem, a problem for them, then there's no reasoning with these folks. I'm convinced of this. Let's stop trying to argue with these people. There is no reasoning with them. They really do love it that some of their family members are losing their jobs because they believe Daddy Trump saying that this has to be done in order to make the government great again. Stop trying to reason with these people. There's no reasoning with them. What we need to do now, if you're scared, if you have just been laid off, if you don't know what you're going to do, if you are pulling your hat, you need to organize. You need to organize right now. Find an anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-Zionist, anti-fascist, preferably Pan-Africanist, international solidarity organization today. Yes, all of those things are important, but we're out of time here on Darker Than Blue. And yes, you can absolutely join the Black Alliance for Peace, blackallianceforpeace.com. We'd love to see you. And if you don't want to join right away, that's okay. We would love to just have a conversation with you. Thank you so much for joining me today on Darker Than Blue. That's it. That's all the time I have for this show. You all watching on Black Liberation Media or in Lukman Nation, stay tuned for the dark room. Woo, it's dark and steamy in there. Until next week, you all listening. A luta continua. The struggle continues, but if we keep fighting, I promise you, victory is certain. Victoria acerta. Peace. What up, though? Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for continuing to join me here on the dark room. Oops, well, you see my nail stuff over there, my little nail salon. I got a weird obsession with doing my own nails, because I'm broke, but I want to stay cute. So thanks y'all for hanging out with me in the dark room. Oh my gosh. This whole thing with these people who have been fired has been, oof, man. I honestly have not been able to understand how tens of thousands of people were just like, oh, he's terminating my job. Okay. All right. So what I said at the end of Darker Than Blue, with people who don't have any compassion for folks who are fired, even their family members. I'm not making this up. So this is being reported by the Associated Press. And they say, scrambling to replace their health insurance and to find new work, some laid off federal workers are running into another unexpected unpleasantry: relatives cheering their firing. The country's bitterly tribal politics, are spiraling into text chains, social media posts, and heated conversations as Americans absorb the reality of the government's cost-cutting measures. Oops, got that. All right. Expecting sympathy. Come on now, computer. Thank you. Expecting sympathy. Some axed workers are finding family and friends who instead are steadfast in their support of what they see as a bloated government's waste. Quote, I've been treated as a public enemy by the government, and now it's bleeding into my own family, says 24-year-old Luke Tobin, who was fired last month from his job as a technician within the U.S. Forest Service in Idaho's Nez Perce National Forest. Tobin's job loss sent him scurrying to fill prescriptions before he lost his health insurance. I know what that's like. And filling out dozens of applications to find whatever work he can, even if it's at a fast food restaurant. But some relatives reacting or reacting to his firing, but some relatives reacting to his firing as was what has to happen to make the government great again has been one of the worst parts of the entire ordeal. Tobin says they can't separate their ideology and their politics from supporting their own family and their own loved ones, says Tobin. Tell me you don't understand how politics works without Kristen Jen got a similar response from members of her family after she learned the National Park Service ranger job she was due to start had been put on hold by the billionaire Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency hiring freeze. She thinks it's likely the job will be eliminated altogether, as she has expressed her disappointment over potentially losing her dream job. Some members of her mostly conservative family, she ought to know, have unfriended her on social media. Others are giving her the silent treatment. Nearly all favor such cuts, even if she's a victim of them. She says, my life is disintegrating because I can't work in my chosen field. Yeah, I can't work in mine either, says Jen, 47, from Austin, Texas. Lump on top of that, no support from family. It hits you very hard. I'm sure it does. The strife has extended to Jen's mother, a former federal employee herself, when she has criticized the administration's actions. Her mother simply says she supports the president. She has somehow been convinced that public servants are a parasite and unproductive, even though she was a public servant, says Jen. The federal job cuts are the work of Doge, which has been tearing through agencies looking for suspected waste. No, they haven't. They've been tearing through agencies looking for that money. No official tally of firings has been released, but the list stretches into it's actually tens of thousands, and to nearly every part of the country. More layoffs are expected as Doge continues its work. Eric Anderson, 48, of Chicago, was still absorbing the shock of being fired from his National Park Service job as a biological science technician when he came across his aunt's social media post celebrating the Doge cuts. The gist, Anderson said, was, quote, "Man, it sure is great seeing all this waste being knocked off," end quote. End quote. He grows angry thinking about it. "Do you think I'm a waste?" he says, his voice rising as he recalls the post. "There are a lot of people out there that are hurting right now that are not a waste," end quote. Erica Stubbs, who was working as a forestry technician with the U.S. Forest Service in Boulder, Colorado, is avoiding social media after seeing hate for federal workers. Though most people in her life have been supportive since she was fired, some have made passing comments about the necessity of eliminating jobs like hers. What they tell me is it's just cutting out the waste, the excess spending, that your job's not that important, says 20-year-old Stubbs. "I'm not saying it's the most important job in the world, but it is my job. It's important to me," end quote. Social media is teeming with posts reveling the layoffs and urging Doge fire more. In a fiercely divided country, many saw the cutbacks through their own political lens. How else do you see anything? One man's devastation, it turns out, can be another man's delight. It's like these people don't know who Americans have always been. Riley Ratcliffe, who was working as an aquatic ecologist at Lake Mead National Recreation Area in Nevada, was buoyed that his firing led so many friends and relatives to reach out, offering to pass his resume along, call their congressman, or even help with his mortgage, because that's what you're supposed to do in a community when your people are hurting, for whatever reason. Mixed with that, though, has been the vitriol. When his firing made the local news, a Facebook posting of the story led to a storm of comments deriding him and championing the layoffs. One person called Riley, who is 36 and holds a PhD, a glorified pool boy whose job nearly anyone could do. Even if some of Ratcliffe's friends paired their expressions of consolation for Ratcliffe with support for cutting jobs, they contended were unnecessary government bloat. They would say things like, "Hey, I'm sorry you lost your job, but I think we really need to cut out some of this waste in the government." Ratcliffe said one friend texted him saying he supported Doge's aims. He basically said, "We've got to do this. We've got to rip the Band-Aid off." What stings most, Ratcliffe says, is the contention that people like him were lazy and worthless. Gee, you don't like it when the white supremacists call you lazy and wow, okay, collecting big paychecks for meaningless work. It's really hurtful for the president to insinuate that you don't exist, or that your job consisted of sitting at home doing nothing and cashing the paycheck, he says. I'd like to see him sifting through spiny naiad in 120-degree weather looking for parasitic snails. He's the one that goes golfing on the government dime. I don't even know how to golf. It's just, they can't even defend themselves. Well, I'm sure it's very fucking hurtful to be told you don't exist by the president that you probably voted for, by the president that we know many of your family members voted for, because look at how they acted. And they knew you had a government job. They knew you had a government job when they voted for that man. They knew. So they didn't all of a sudden start to hate your ass. They've been hating you for a minute. They've been thinking you are a lazy so-and-so. You got one of them cushy government jobs. You one of those. You don't even need to do that job. And it's not because they really believe that it's government. No, they're just reporting repeating, parroting his talking points. That is what they're going to do. But they do believe federal workers today are mostly lazy, don't deserve those jobs, are a bunch of stupid people who are not qualified to do the jobs, collecting a paycheck for money they don't really deserve. And that absolutely is tied to racism, because when the government became desegregated, then all of a sudden, like the lady said earlier in the article, being a civil servant, you used to be an honorable thing. It was a great thing until the niggers and the women and the queers. And oh God, then they let the transes in. And then they started letting the Muslims in and the Chinese. You know how these people talk. You know how they think. Why are we surprised? And the thing is, I don't understand these folks who come from conservative families, y'all. Y'all know y'all people were a bunch of bigoted motherfuckers for years. And you're surprised that they can so easily hate you too. So you watched them and listened to them hate on people based on lies, bullshit, racism, irrationality, just stuff made out, shit folks pulling out of their ass, stuff that ain't true. You listen to that man talk about people in Cleveland where the Haitian immigrants were eating people's dogs. And somehow you did not think that it's not a stretch for your family members who believed that shit to turn around and hate you because you are an employee of the government that their Führer says is their enemy. And then, of course, I was going to say I hate to say it, but I actually don't hate to say it. I love being able to say this. I really am enjoying being able to say this because now y'all know what it feels like to be treated like niggas. Because this is the treatment we have been getting. This is why conservatives have always, well, not always, ever since the Civil Rights Act was passed, ever since the Civil Rights Movement and the Black Power Movement and the demands to desegregate, the largest employer in the country, the federal government at that time, because now the largest employer in the country are Walmart and Amazon. But at the time of the Civil Rights Movement, the largest employer in the country was the federal government. So, yeah, we were demanding desegregation of the largest employer in the country so we could get a damn job, so we could feed our families too. And ever since then, white people who they had all the jobs in the federal government. Before then, they didn't have any complaints about the government. Well, that's not entirely true, but they didn't. You understand what I mean? Most people who were not pissed off at the government because the government tried to tell them they couldn't expand slavery. Everybody else who's not those assholes, the neo-Confederates, everybody else was just like, the government is great. The government takes care of our needs. The government ensures that our constitutional rights are met. The government takes care of the people. The government is we the people. But then integration happened, and all of a sudden the government is corrupt. It's too many lazy people. It's unqualified people in the government. There's a bunch of people in the government collecting paychecks, and they can't even read. That's where this hatred of the government, this needing to slash government spending comes from. Because these white people who were in these government jobs before integration happened, they weren't talking about slashing no damn government. They were not trying to cut out their jobs, but they have no problem cutting out jobs that they tell people are filled by unqualified people through DEI because of woke culture spreading through the government because of affirmative action. Yeah, because when they use those words, now I can say the word I want to say. When they use those words, DEI, welfare queen, tough on crime, phrases like that, that kind of, when they use those phrases, what they really want to say is niggers. And they don't want to say black people. They don't want to say African Americans. Nope. They are thinking niggas. This is how we're gonna get rid of the rest of these niggas. This is how we're gonna shut them up. They are no longer gonna be a thorn in our side, these fucking niggas. Because we're gonna eliminate DEI, and we're gonna eliminate affirmative action, and we're gonna eliminate any kind of program that provides an opportunity for them to enter into spaces where we dominate, where we do not want them. That's simply all it is. That is what it is. And we've been talking about this for decades. And these folks, now that they're getting caught up in the dragnet, because they didn't see a problem with their conservative family members and friends who had no problem talking about all the niggas that need to be fired from the federal government, because it's the niggas that's making the federal government corrupt and wasteful with the money. And yeah. So they were fine with sitting around their folks listening to that bullshit, probably fully expecting themselves that it was a bunch of lazy niggas that was going to get fired, and it turned out to be them. Because while Black people are overrepresented in the government, we are 14% of the population. We have about 18 to 20% of the employees in the federal government. Most of the people fired so far, from what I know, have not been Black. That does not mean that no Black people have been fired. That does not mean that a lot of Black people, I'm sure hundreds, if not thousands, of Black people have been fired. What I am saying is, from this article, a lot more of the people who have been fired are not Black. And they are surprised that they were caught up in this too. They thought they were going to be exempt. I think some of these people really believed that they were just going to sit happily at their desks while somebody came and paraded all of the Negroes out of the agency. And they weren't going to do anything about that when that happened. They were just going to sit there, hold their head down, keep doing their work. At least it won't me. At least I'm qualified for my job. I got a PhD. That's why they ain't coming after me. That's why you need to get your education. If you get your education, can't nobody take that away from the, oh yeah? Where you at now? And I'm not laughing at the particular person from this article. I am laughing at the attitude that I know some of these people had. That's why they're so freaked out, y'all. That is why they are so freaked out, because they did not expect to be the ones to be fired. That is one shock. But then the other shock of having their friends and family members turn on them after all this time of these people sitting in these folks' presence and listening to them say racist and sexist and Islamophobic and queer and transphobic shit. They sat around and soaked all this crap up and never thought for a second, wow, these motherfuckers are dangerous. Like, if they want to do this to a bunch of people that we don't know, they don't know, we don't know any people like them, these people don't even live in our neighborhood, so they can't be doing anything to us. But if they want to do these kinds of things to those people, why do I think they wouldn't turn on me? I mean, they don't know those people at all. They're believing what this man says about that. How is that even true? So if they would go all in to do these horrible things to people they don't even know, of course they would turn on me. Of course, I cannot trust them. No, they never thought that. They never thought that. That is why they're so shocked at being treated by their conservative friends and family the way they have seen their conservative friends and family say they wanted to treat the Negras. So, you know, I sympathize with these people, but in that compassion that I have for their predicament, because I don't want anybody to be homeless and destitute and struggling financially. I'm a socialist. I'm a communist that wants socialism. Yes, I want that. So nobody has to worry about that shit. So everybody can own their home. So nobody has to worry about going hungry. So that healthcare is provided and guaranteed by the government, and nobody has to worry about not having enough money for a copay. I want that for everybody. Sometimes I don't want that for the fascists. I don't want that for the fascists. I don't. Even if I think that it might turn some of them around. I don't want, I don't want that for the fascists at all. I want them to be somewhere away from us, away from humanity. Where you know what I want to do? You know what I would love to do with the fascists? I would love to put them, I would love to do with them the thing that people say they always want to do with other people. I want to put them all on an island by themselves. I want to put them all on a deserted island in the middle of the ocean and let them duke it out and survive on their own or not. But I want them away from us. I want them away from humanity. And yes, more will come. That they'll have babies, and more will come, and more people. But this is why countries that have won their revolutions have to continue to defend their revolutions, because the revolutions will continue to be attacked by the next generation of capitalist dictators and fascists. So, you know, so I don't want people to be destitute. I don't want people to lose their jobs and to have a hard time financially, because that causes stress, and stress can kill you, sends you to an early grave. But I do want to ask these people, how do you think immigrants felt when he talked shit about them? And your folks agreed with him and talked shit about them immigrants right along with him. How do you think foreigners in their own countries felt when he called them Haitians and Africans mostly, that they come from shithole countries? How did you respond to that when your family members and your friends repeated that shit? How about the women when he said, if you're famous, you can just grab him by the pussy? How did you feel when, oh, wait a minute, that's right. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Most white women voted for that man. More than 50% of the white women in this country voted for that man. So y'all like that shit. So I'm sorry. I retract that question. That's not an answer. It's not a question I need an answer to. Obviously, y'all roll like that. But in another case of everybody is fucking around and finding out that they don't just hate niggas, they hate you too. German tourists have been detained for weeks, and then they were deported by the U.S. government. Oh, this place. Oh, and by the way, the acronym on the promo, let me put it back up again. If you didn't see it, it's FAFOE, not just FAFO, because it's not fuck around and find out. This situation is really fuck around and find out. But it's really fascists always fuck over everybody. So the Germans now. There have been a couple of instances, and I'm pretty sure that there will be more. And see, I didn't I didn't even have the article yet. It It's already, oh yeah, it's happening. A Canadian woman was sent to an ICE detention center when she tried to renew her visa. So, amid Trump's border crackdowns, German news media have been closely following the treatment of two tourists who say they tried to enter the United States legally. They were chained, detained for weeks, and eventually deported. Two German tourists trying to enter the United States were recently tangled in a system responding to President Trump's illegal push to sharply restrict entry and deport people en masse. The cases of Jessica Broshi, held for 46 days, and Lucas Seeloff, held for 16 days, and accounts of their rough handling by immigration officers have grabbed headlines in Germany as a sign of what being caught on the House's immigration policy could mean for European travelers, on the wrong side of White House's immigration policies. Tourists from most European countries, this is important to understand, tourists from most European countries, including Germany, generally enjoy visa-free travel to the United States for up to 90 days. So they can come to the United States with just a passport, do not need a visa, and stay for 90 days. But Mr. Seeloff and Ms. Broshi were stopped, separated at the San Ysidro border crossing between San Diego and Tijuana, told that they were being denied entry and sent to a crowded detention center, according to their own accounts and those of their friends. Mr. Seeloff said he was denied a translator, which is absolutely illegal. Absolutely illegal, denied a translator, and had trouble understanding what was happening to him. Ms. Broshi's friend said she was kept in solitary confinement for 9 days. You're already detained in an ICE detention about to be deported. What the fuck they putting you in solitary confinement for? Because you're angry about being illegally detained? By their accounts, both were flown back to Germany without a clear understanding of why they were detained in the first place. Because remember, they do not need a visa to enter into the United States. All they need is a passport. And they had that. Sometimes I just wake up because I have nightmares of the situation and what happened, Mr. Seeloff, who's 25, said in an interview, and I just try to go for walks and calm down. The family of a tourist from Britain, Becky Burke, 28, says she has been held for more than 2 weeks in Washington state, similarly caught up in the system but unsure why. U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, known as ICE, did not respond on Thursday to requests for comment on their cases, and they're not gonna, because the interim head of ICE is a Trump appointee, so they just doing whatever. Ms. Broshi was detained at the border on January 25th, according to an online fundraising campaign that friends set up to lobby for her release. She was traveling on the Electronic System for Travel Authorization, or ESTA, available to tourists from countries who do not need a visa to travel to the United States, but are still required to declare the purpose of their visit. So they had all the paperwork they actually needed. She told the German newspaper Bild, B-I-L-D, that is the name of the German newspaper, that she had completed the authorization and planned to enter the United States after spending a week in Tijuana. At the border, officials flagged issues with her documentation. According to the online petition, Ms. Broshi, a 29-year-old tattoo artist, could not be reached for an interview, but Nikita that's interesting. Nikita Lufving, I think that's how you pronounce it, a friend who has spoken with her, said in an interview that she thought officials saw saw the tattooing equipment in Ms. Brochi's luggage and might have concluded that she planned to work in the United States. Yeah, let's not make excuses for these fascist motherfuckers. That's not why they detained her and told her that she was going to be deported. She was sent to the Otay Mesa Detention Center in San Diego. The authorities told her she would be detained for, quote unquote, a couple of days, according to the online fundraiser. But what followed was an alarming sequence of events. After being denied entry, Brochi was placed in solitary confinement for 9 days. She remained at the center for more than 6 weeks. Friends said her case apparently lost in a border enforcement backlog. Just the sheer fact of not knowing what's going on drove her insane, Miss Lofving said. She could barely sleep the whole time she was in there. She was up at night crying. Miss Brochi arrived back in Germany on Wednesday. She will need a few days to recover, but she wants to speak out when she's been fed and slept and properly cried a bit in her mom's arms. Mr. Seeloff said he had traveled to the United States on January 27th to see his partner, Lennon Tyler, an American psychologist who lives in Las Vegas. 3 weeks later, they drove to Tijuana for medical treatment for Dr. Tyler's dog. But when they attempted to return on February 18th, they didn't get past the border checkpoint. He said he struggled to hear the border control officer questioning him, and he gave a muddled answer. He and Dr. Tyler said the officers asked about his place of residence, suggesting that he had been illegally living in the United States, although they had no evidence of that, not just visiting, and then taken for questioning. Although after Mr. Seeloff was bundled off to an interrogation room, he said his repeated requests for a German translator were denied. He said the written report of his interrogation did not accurately reflect what he had said or even the questions he had been asked. I said, I don't live here and I have to go back to Germany before the 90 days, and they didn't even listen to me, Mr. Seeloff said. After more than an hour of questioning, he was denied re-entry to the U.S. and was chained to a bench along with other travelers. Why am I being detained? Is this illegal? Can you do this to a United States citizen? Let me see. Where is the end of this thing? Let's see. Let's go to the end. Oh, here it is. This is what I was looking for. He said, this is Mr. Seeloff, he said the only way he was given to communicate with the ICE agents assigned to his case was through a tablet computer shared among inmates. And I hate that they are calling these people inmates because they're designating them as prisoners, criminals. And that's bullshit. But he didn't know what who those agents were. I asked so many people if they know who my ICE officer is, he said in an interview. I don't even know who it was in the end. Dr. Tyler called the immigration authorities daily. She hired lawyers who also called them. She gave news media interviews, and she reached out repeatedly to a German consulate. Eventually, last week, Mr. Seeloff was allowed voluntarily deportation after they were harassed by Seeloff's supporters on a flight that cost him. It cost him. They made him pay for his own deportation flight because this system will fuck you over one way or another, even if they have to let you go. This flight cost him, this deportation flight cost him $2,744. My lawyer said, bother them until they let him go, Dr. Tyler said, and that's what Lucas and I did. We just made ourselves a nuisance. And I swear, we do not do enough of that for anything, for anything. But, you know, I find it interesting, some of the comments and the questions from these folks. And again, it's like, man, tell me you don't know anything about this country without actually saying you don't know shit about the United States. Because these people are surprised. They were surprised that they don't have any rights in immigration. Nobody does. This is the way people who have been detained by ICE under Biden, Harris, and under Trump, and under Obama, Biden, under Trump, under Clinton, Gore. Because remember, we talked about where this immigration policy comes from, where it originated, who signed it into law, which administration did it pass under? Bill Clinton. And he started the mass deportation of people. This is the way people have always been treated in this system. Trump has only taken it a step further, but the previous step was already firmly rooted in fascism. So, these folks who don't know anything about the U.S. law enforcement, legal immigration system, the laws in this country, how the people are generally just treated like shit. If people in this country decide that you are, I cannot keep these things clean, that if you are, if they decide that you are a criminal, if they decide that you are not useful to capitalism, that you are a threat to their way of life. That's what that means, by the way. When these people say, oh, they're threatening our way of life, they're not talking about like values. They always say that shit. Oh, they're threatening our traditional values. There's nothing I can do that can keep you from marrying your cousin that you want to marry. Shit. Knock yourself out. The two of you, please take yourselves off of everybody else's hands. We don't want to stop that. Gay people are not trying to keep you from marrying who you want to marry. Trans people are not trying to keep you from being as feminine and as ladylike and as frilly and lacy and pink and Barbie as you want to be. No. Black folks are not trying to make you personally pay reparations for me. But if you can open up them purse strings, I'm not going to stop you. If you feel guilty enough to do it, I'm also not opposed to that. But generally, Black people are not like, yeah, take all the white folks stuff. That's what they think we want, because that is what they have done. You see, their stereotypes about us are rooted in their projection of their knowledge about how awful they know they are. They know they have everything they have because they have done the things to us and other people that they are claiming they're afraid we're going to do to them. Man, the only thing we have ever asked from these people has been justice and reparations. And I think we need to change that reparations demand a little bit, not abandon it, just change the way we approach it, because the way it's going now it's a fucking mess. But the only thing we have ever asked from this country was justice and equality. We have never asked for retribution, and they're lucky. And the thing is, they know they're lucky. They know we're not asking. They know we're not going to do these things. They have to keep saying that they're afraid we're going to do these things to continue to prop up the lies. Right? So we have to remain dangerous in the collective white supremacist capitalist psyche in order to continue to justify our continued oppression and repression when we do speak out. Right? So these folks don't understand that this is the way this system operates all the time, and the way they were treated is the way we have always been treated. What y'all were here? Weren't y'all here last year when we talked about, or in the last Trump administration, when we talked about the way the Haitians were treated? But were you also here last year, and the year before, and the year before that, and the first year of Biden's administration, when he starts deporting people? We were talking about all that, and we were talking about the context in which Biden-Harris was doing it, specifically targeting African-descended immigrants. immigrants from Haiti, immigrants from African countries. So this kind of shock and surprise at the lack of um actual equality, justice, and rights in this country is also a reflection of them not knowing the history of repression in this country. So they don't know anything about the way we have been treated. They might know a little bit, but most people on Reddit, they don't know US history. How do I know this? Because we don't know US history. We do not know it. So this is why you can have some people who are African, who are identifying themselves with this country and saying things like, well, I'm not going to worry about ICE. I ain't got to worry about ICE because I got my birth certificate and I'm a citizen and I'm an FBA and I'm an ADOS and I'm a what is the new phrase? I can't remember what the new phrase. There's a new phrase. I don't know what it is. And they actually believe that them identifying themselves with this country will protect them from ICE. Oh yeah, tell the indigenous who have been snatched up by ICE that they were here before everybody. Everybody. I don't care what anybody says about Africans being here. They weren't. Those statues are of indigenous people. They're not of, ooh, man. So of course they are surprised by how they were treated. They enjoy the relationship that two colonial powers have with each other, or that three, because we're talking about European countries, the European powers, Germany, France, the UK, and I'm sure a bunch of Italy, a bunch of other European countries don't need a visa to come here. That is African countries. People from African countries do need visas to come here. And I think a lot of African countries actually just suspended the US's visa-free status. They're like, nope, y'all can't. You're not going to keep coming here willy-nilly with all this going on. And I don't know how much good that's going to do because, too many of the leaders in too many African countries are US puppets. But that's another conversation for another day. This situation with this immigration stuff, these folks are shocked and surprised. And there's all this outrage about what is being done now, particularly in the case of the German tourists. There's somebody else. Like we showed earlier, there's a Canadian tourist who's been swept up in this. I just saw right before I went on for Darker Than Blue that somebody else from another European country has been detained by ICE. So these folks don't know the history of repression in this country, do not realize that this is normal. This is what they do. This is what they've always done. Didn't pay any attention to the Biden-Harris administration doing very close to this. Mamadou Tall, who was threatened with deportation for participating in anti-genocide protests at Cornell University. Cornell threatened to not to let him graduate. This happened last year. So, okay, they didn't know anything about that. But then the biggest problem with their shock and surprise is, and I think it's the same response I have to Canada being all hissy about the tariffs. Like, y'all are colonial partners with the imperialist power. I don't care that he's hurting your feelings. You all thought that you could continue to operate as colonial co-conspirators, I guess, imperialist partners, and travel back and forth between each other's countries and enjoying this special relationship like you have been for decades, probably centuries. And this guy comes along and he's like, nope, we hate y'all too. we, we hate y'all too. Why? Because you're not American. And they thought that this would never happen to them because they believed that their whiteness would save them. Their acceptance of the imperialist world order would exempt them from this treatment. These people don't understand. These American settler colonists, they don't. These are the people that the Nazis took notes from. Do you understand how the European settler colonists nearly genocided the indigenous hundreds of millions of people? In this country, the Germans looked at that and like, oh, we have got to learn from them what they did because we're going to do that. That's these settler colonists over here. And they know what they have done. Please stop believing that these people are clueless about this history. No. They know. And they have no intention of ever reconciling, being accountable for, acknowledging the atrocities, or doing or paying or acknowledging or even talking about any kind of restitution to the survivors and the descendants of the people that they did these things to. They know damn well their relatives were in those crowds at those lynchings. They know that. And they don't give a damn. So we need to be very clear. We cannot negotiate with terrorists. Isn't that what they have been saying all this time? We don't negotiate with terrorists. We shouldn't negotiate with these motherfucking terrorists either, because that's what they are. And the Germans and the Canadians and the French, they have now found out that they have been in an unequal relationship with a terrorist, the United States government. And it was a relationship that they put everything into, and the U.S. ordered everybody around. Mm-hmm. So now everybody, all kinds of people are finding out. They are finding out that fascists always fuck over everybody. How the Germans couldn't figure this out, I don't know. But then again, these are the people who were treating anti-genocide protesters as if they were the reincarnation of the Nazis, when the actual people who are the reincarnation of the Nazis have been, going on killing. Germany was sending those people weapons to continue to be the reincarnation that can't make it up, cannot make this up. So while I am really, he and I are fighting right now because he was a whole fool yesterday when we went for a walk. Slipped out of his collar. I bought him a new collar. It's a nice one with a handle on it so I could grab him real quick. That dog, I don't know how he shrunk his big old head. The thing wasn't tight enough, but he slipped his head out of the collar and he ran and chased another dog. So the other dog is fine. It was I'm a big dog and I want to play with this other big dog, but there was growling involved and I was freaked out. And me and Kamati have been beefing for 2 days. So he's on edge. I'm mad. He in the room in there. I'm in here because we can't be in the same room right now. So, but I will give him his little treat later on because we can't stay mad at the fur baby for a long time. But so what a lot of people are indeed fucking around and finding out is that fascists always fuck over everybody, even you, the folks who supported the fascists. I see y'all over in the comment with your little right-wing comments. Bless your little hearts. Y'all ain't got nothing better to do on a Friday night than to come on my show and make cute little right-wing comments about stuff that you don't agree with. You know, it's funny. When I finish doing this show, I don't go on other people's shows that I don't agree with and sit there for an hour and a half and tell them repeatedly how I don't agree with every single fucking word they say, because I have a goddamn life. And I honestly, I do not understand why people don't go live yours if you don't like what's being said over here, because there's plenty for all of us to do. And while you are doing this, you're not doing anything else productive that will be helpful to the people that you say that I am not serving. So I don't know what the point is for all of this, other than you just really like fucking with people. And I guess this is like you live in your high school days where you were the mean girl in the locker room. All right, cool. Do you, boo. So a lot of people are finding out their true position in this society. They're not middle class. They're not, you know, a part of the elite. They're not even really, they're not even really, like I said, they're not middle class. They think they are, but they're not. And finding out that these things that they believed about themselves and their role in society, and all of that, it's disturbing for them. It is an existential crisis for them. A lot of these people are going to be wondering, man, what am I going to do now? How am I going to deal with my family and friends? You saw people aren't talking to each other. Excuse me. And to be honest, I have unfriended people who I love, but I can't talk to them on social media when everything they talk about is Trump is the devil, Trump is the devil, Trump is the devil, Trump is the devil. But last year, when me and my comrades were out in these streets every damn week, every week, sometimes 2-3 times a week, different locations, these motherfuckers ain't had shit to say. No, and I'm thinking of 2 people in particular, and I love them, but I didn't have any problem hitting the unfriend button, because when you realize that people are not going to challenge fascism in all of its forms, wherever it comes from, you suddenly realize who you can depend on and who you can't. See, our people down in St. Petersburg, the Uhuru 3, talk about them all the time. They were repressed by the Biden administration. All of the people that I have unfriended over the past 3 or 4 weeks, especially since the meeting with Zelensky, because people still got that damn anti-communism, that people are still very much, and it's wild how an entire country of people, 300 million people, at least half of those people hate something that they don't know what it is. They literally cannot define communism or socialism, do not know what they are, believe the narratives about them that have been presented to them in movies and television shows, to the point that they cheered on the US government when it repressed people speaking out against imperialist war by calling them agents of Russia. And I'm not talking about 2016. I'm not talking about 2024. I'm not talking about 2020. I'm talking about the original Red Scare during World War I. That's where this comes from. And people are still in this country talking about they hate communism. Putin is the devil. Putin is a communist. That he is not a communist. Communism is evil. Communism killed millions of people. Capitalism is actively killing Millions of people around the world actively right now. All these people talk about, oh, communist dictators have killed millions. Let me tell you something. Y'all keep Stalin's name out your mouth. Because Stalin was right. There are going to be some people when the revolution happens that are going to have to be removed from among us in some kind of way because they will not contribute to society, to move society forward for everyone in society. They will always be not just oppositional, but they will always be willing to work to undermine the revolution. I'm not making this up. Look at Cuba, look at Venezuela, look at Nicaragua, look at the African leaders who were assassinated. Two of them, at least two of them, their own right-hand men were involved in their assassination because their own right-hand men got in bed with the imperialists who wanted the socialist African leaders gone. And people sitting here talking about communism is evil and capitalism is good. People don't understand the difference between capitalism and commerce. People think we are literally talking about, why don't you like trade? No, this is not trade. We're talking about capitalism, which is a specific thing, not just trade, not just commerce. Fucking idiots. So we've got more than half of the country hating something they don't understand, can't define. And isn't that the same thing about this whole trans issue too? It was the same thing about gay marriage. It was the same goddamn thing about AIDS. It was the same fucking thing. These dumb people, well, they're not dumb. These hateful ass motherfucking people really just don't like people who are not like them. They honestly just hate people who look different from them, who live different from them, who worship different from them, who believe in different politics from them. And they don't just see these people, us, as different because we are different, because we don't subscribe to Americanism or American exceptionalism. We're not just different, we are their enemy. Right? That is the way they see us. That is the way they treat us. And that is the way we have always been treated in this country. And these folks are just finding out. These folks are just finding out. So, when people talk about not challenging this system of inequality and injustice, or when people come and offer really unprincipled criticism of people raising the contradictions that we are having to deal with and that we're going to have to deal. We just need to be clear that these people are the enemy, period. They are the enemy. And some of these folks, we're going to have to leave them behind somewhere. Some of these folks who got fucked over with this firing thing. Yeah, some of them we're gonna have to. I have compassion for these people, but some of them, we're gonna have to, because the way they just kind of rolled over and did what this man said, I am still just because I'm sorry, I know too many Black folks, and I am one of those people who like, you're not gonna mistreat me on a job for too long. I don't understand how there was no and they belong to unions. And the unions didn't do more than just send them an email and tell them don't take the deal. That's not organization. And see, for an organizer, that kind of stuff is maddening. It's maddening because you have all these people in this one place, which is like after COVID, that is the big concern for a lot of organizers. How are we getting people? Are we getting people to come outside again? That's kind of hard, especially since now there are 3 viruses floating around: RSV, the flu, and COVID. Yo. And measles also, and measles, and bird flu. Yeah. Oh, and STDs are still being spread around. Like, yeah, all of that. So, you know, it is the price of admission for this work. It's the price of admission. It's the paycheck, right? This is the paycheck we revolutionaries get. We get a lot of work. We get a lot of meetings, a lot of notes, a lot of documents, a lot of criticism, a lot. But in between all of that, and I'm having to remind myself of this, and I think somebody in the chat said it for me. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is. Thank you, Jaribu Mapinduzi. Comrade Jackie, we send in too much love to counteract those fascist haters. Thank you for your work. That's the thing that I am having to remind myself of this Lenten season. That I take time away from the people who are trying to learn, who are disagreeing but are disagreeing in good faith, who are not being confrontational or sarcastic or passive aggressive or just downright fucking snarky, thinking they're being cute, trying to be slick, saying personal shit to me. I take time away from people who are involved in this work or who want to get involved in this work, who are asking, how do I get involved in this work? So this Lenten season, I'm trying to take the things out of me that are causing me stress that I don't need. And that's one of those things. Because I can't focus so much. And I have been sort of doing that a little bit, more than I like. I cannot focus so much on the haters that I miss the multitude of the masses who are here for this work. Not for me, but for this work. And for that, I appreciate y'all. I really do appreciate you, Jaribu Mapinduzi, for reminding me of that. So I'm going to end on that note tonight. Thank y'all so much. I believe Kim Brown is on this Friday. Yes, Rouse Pasta Sauce, reclaiming our time. Indeed, we are. That is what I'm going to do. Thank y'all so much for joining me this week. Appreciate you. Tomorrow, Saturday, go to Baltimore if you are in the area. 12:30 to 3, Payne Memorial AME Church for BAP Baltimore's teach-in on African mothers on the front line fighting for community control. That is tomorrow. And if you're in the DC area around the ICE building at 3 o'clock, there will be a Palestinian Youth Movement rally to demand the release of Khalil, but also to call out the systemic nature of this issue and the bipartisan facilitation of ICE's ability to even do this kind of thing. We're going to be talking about that tomorrow at 3 o'clock at the ICE headquarters with the Palestinian Youth Movement and a bunch of other groups. Normally, we would not endorse or be involved in a rally for an individual because we don't individualize politics, right? But because PYM is clear that this is not a Trump issue, this is not even a Biden issue. This is a Trump, Biden, Democrat, Republican system in America issue. And the focus is not on Khalil. Yes, we want him freed, but he's not the only one. He wasn't the first. And this issue is not about him either. The primary contradiction is the system. And that's why we are joining in this rally with PIM to chant down Babylon, man. All right, y'all. Peace. See you next week. A luta continua. The struggle continues. But if we keep fighting, And if we keep focusing on the things that we should focus on, Victoria Acerta, victory is certain. Peace, peoples.